Hello and welcome to the Breaking Muscle Podcast, where we take you inside the minds and lives of some of the most spectacular athletes in the world. I am Pete Hitzeman, your host and managing editor of BreakingMuscle.com. Georges Hébert was a groundbreaking physical educator from France in the first half of the 20th century, whose influence on the art and science of human movement is still felt today. Be strong to be useful was his ethos for training, and that notion has regained popularity over the last decade. Few people exemplify those words better than Michael McCastle. Michael's strength is the stuff of legend. He set a world record for pull-ups in 24 hours while wearing a 30-pound pack. He ran a 50K wearing a 40-pound vest. And right now, he's in the thick of another superhuman effort, running 20 miles every day for 100 days. But Michael isn't satisfied to be strong for himself or for his own glory. He takes on these herculean tasks as part of his 12 Labors project, which turns his physical efforts into philanthropic ones. His epic achievements have allowed him to raise money for children's cancer research, wounded veterans, Parkinson's disease research, and veteran suicide prevention. We dive into what goes through his head when he's taking on these challenges, why worry is just a habit that's out of control, and what he means when he says there is no failure, only feedback. If you're looking for an interview that will leave you motivated and inspired, this is the one. Enjoy. Welcome to the Breaking Muscle Podcast. I am your host, Pete Hitzeman. Joining me today from the sunny Northwest is Michael McCastle, founder of the 12 Laborers Project. And Michael, how are you on this fine afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You have a lot going on to take time out and talk to us about all of the things you have. So we were just talking, you just got back from your daily 20-mile run. Why don't we back out for a second and talk about why you are running 20 miles every day?
So I started running 20 miles every day, and my goal is to run for 100 consecutive days, and for 2,000 miles in 100 days, and I'm doing it to raise awareness for veteran suicide. I was a Navy vet. I did 11 years in the Navy, and I've lost close friends to suicide after they left the service. So I wanted to do an event to raise awareness for the national statistic, which is 20 suicides per day. So by running 20 miles every day for 100 days, I hope to start that conversation, or actually keep that conversation going and bring awareness and actually raise some funds for an all-inclusive retreat that I'm putting on the day after I finish this challenge. So I'm doing this retreat that has like yoga and equine therapy and a lot of different modalities that is geared towards helping veterans suffering from PTSD let go of some of those burdens that they're carrying.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll back up even further. Let's go to the beginning. When you joined the Navy?
I joined the Navy back in 2005, and I just got out last year.
Okay.
So I spent 11 years, and I was an air traffic controller in the Navy.
Where all were you stationed that you can tell us?
I was stationed overseas in Europe. I've been on deployments to all over Southeast Asia and Philippines, and I've been on 2 ships, amphibious ships, and I've been stationed stateside in San Diego and Washington State.
Okay. What was your motivation for joining back in 2005?
Really, my motivation. Motivation is a funny word. I really wouldn't say I was motivated to join the military, because the thing about motivation is that you're never motivated when you really need it the most, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time, I wasn't really. I really didn't have direction. I didn't need the motivation because I had no direction to be motivated towards. But 9/11 happened when I was a sophomore, and my parents both served in the military. My mother is in the Air Force, my dad is in the Air Force, and 9/11 kind of put things into perspective for me. It kind of gave me a value on really making something in my life, and it gave me that innate desire to serve. I believe that everyone is destined to be really great at something. And there's a lot of different ways to serve, and I felt that at the time my purpose, began to develop. I began to have a clarity on what my purpose was, and it was to serve in some capacity whether it's in the military or some other type of service, which later in my career and now that I feel like I'm still serving to do. So I joined the military as soon as I graduated. I was something about turning on the TV and seeing 3,000 Americans get murdered. It kind of sparked something in you, and I joined right after high school and went into the Navy.
Yeah, it was definitely. I was in a weird place because I had actually enlisted before 9/11 happened, but I hadn't gone to basic yet. I was waiting for my window to open.
Mm-hmm.
So I had already signed papers, but I didn't go until March of '02. So it was a very, very serious, very transformative time for me too.
Imagine.
But what did you do athletically before joining the Navy?
I was an average athlete. I didn't, I played basketball. I ran track and field. Like I said, I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the, I didn't really. I did well, but I wasn't like ahead of the pack. So I just did athletics as a way to kind of get out of the mundaneness of my life. And at that point, things were kind of chaotic. I was the sole caretaker of my dad, who at the time was suffering from Parkinson's disease, and he had suffered several heart attacks and strokes. So it was just me and him. So I was pretty much making sure that he was taken care of, making sure he was making his appointments, bathing him, making sure he was getting his foods. So that was my high school life. So I did sports as a way to just kind of step out of that world for a little bit, take my stress relief, take my mind off it. I really didn't have a passion for sports or anything like that, but I did pretty well, naturally.
So you're kind of an all-rounder, but it was more, like you're saying, a distraction from
Sure.
the, I won't say harsh realities, because everybody's reality is what they make of it, but from the frank realities that you had to deal with kind of in real life at home. So you started doing all of these crazy things, right? All of these things that no one would even think. You flipped a tire for 13 miles. Do what?
Crazy is in the eye of the beholder.
It is. No, people have called some of the things I do crazy too, and I'm like, that's totally normal. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? So you've flipped a tire for 20 miles. Right now you're 38 days into 100 consecutive days of running 20 miles.
Tomorrow will be 38.
You hold world records for pull-ups and rope climbs and all the. When did you discover that you had the capacity in you to exceed what the human mechanism is understood to do?
I think that I've always known that. Again, your physical ability is only as good as your driving force behind it. So the effort that you put forward and your physical, whatever you do physically, the reason why you're doing it, the purpose, the cause behind you do it, that will determine how much of that effort you can really, and how much further beyond those limits you can go. So for me, it was, like I said, I was an average athlete, but all throughout my life, I've had to overcome obstacles, and I've had to overcome experiences where I've had to suffer a great deal. And I realized early on that I had this ability to just endure great amounts of pain. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't always the first in the race. I wasn't always, but I knew that I could outlast. And to me, the mindset going into a lot of these things is I don't have to, if it happens to be a record, it happens to be a record. But my mindset is I will outlast whatever the pain or suffering that is associated with this event. If I can outlast it, I could do anything for minutes. If I can outlast it, then I'll succeed at my mission or my goal or whatever it is. So I think for me, I realized very early in my life that I don't have to win every single battle. I just have to endure every single battle. And if I endure, then at the end I'll eventually win and get what I want or achieve my goal. So for me, that was kind of what made me realize that, oh, well, if I could just endure, then I can push my body further than anything I thought was possible. And I started it as, really a test, an experiment to see how far I could really push not only my body but my spirit, right, the human spirit. I wanted to see how far that I could take that. And so I set out doing this 12 Labors project. And I knew that I would not be able to, in order for me to push myself and bring myself into that place beyond those limits, I would need a cause, I would need a strong purpose, I would need something greater than myself in order to do it. Because if I did it just for me, if I did it just for a record, I probably wouldn't have achieved half the stuff I've achieved. Because the record, the actual physical feat, that's not what gets me up in the morning to train. That's not what gets me up at 3 o'clock in the morning to run 20 miles. It's the cause, it's my purpose, it's the drive behind it that I am intimately connected to for each and every event that I do.
Yeah, I think that's the mindset that you're talking about behind that. I mean, behind finding the extrinsic factor to latch onto is that you don't consider the limit as something defined, but you're already looking past it. I think most people who take on any kind of endurance event, myself included, they're looking for the limit of their performance, the limit of their endurance. They're looking to find how far they can go, but that's the destination for them, is the limit. You're looking to find out what you can do when you reach that limit to get past it, which is, it's a small shift, but it enables some truly amazing things. So what was your first labor, as it were, the first amazing thing that you took on?
Well, my first labor wasn't, at the time I didn't really consider it a labor, and it wasn't until, it was actually, the first thing I did was before 12 Labors Project started officially, and then I added it to the 12 Labors once I actually called it 12 Labors Project. But I did a 50-kilometer run with a 40-pound vest on for children's cancer. I did it in Seattle, and I wanted to raise awareness for children's cancer. The most common cancer among toddlers is leukemia, and the average age for kids with leukemia is 4 years old, and they weigh about 40 pounds. So I thought I would they wouldn't let me run with a kid with cancer in my arms. So
that's probably frowned on.
They're like, no, and so I just put on the 40-pound vest to kind of carry that burden for them, at least for 50 kilometers. I did that to raise awareness for that.
I mean, 50 kilometers is not a joke. Like, that is, you're not a small guy. Obviously, no. You're not built like a Kenyan. Like, you're already a dude who's moving some mass, moving some inertia, and then you strap on some extra weight and go for a 31-mile run. Like, that's a fairly serious endeavor there.
Yeah, I was hurting pretty bad after that, but I recovered. You know, that's the thing is, you know, all pain is temporary, and all I had to do was just endure and just outlast it. I recovered. It took me a little while. I may have had a couple stress fractures and you know, things like that, but those things heal, those things recover. So, and these kids, some of these kids won't even live to see their next birthday. So if I could bring some attention and awareness to that, and that it was worth it for me.
Now, your first attempt at the pull-up record, you tore muscles and you got rhabdo and you were in the hospital. And talk about that. Tell me that story. Like, how did that go for you in your mind?
Yeah, sure. So now I started 12 Labors Project, and I wanted to break the world record for pull-ups, most pull-ups in 24 hours, to raise awareness for wounded veterans, emotionally and physical wounds of war. Or their service, and I set out to break the record by a man named David Goggins. He's a SEAL, he's a stud, true legend, beast of a man, and he had set the record back in 2014, 13 or 14. So in 2014, I wanted to break his record, and so my first attempt, I failed. I stopped at 3,202 pull-ups, and earlier, prior to stopping, around 2,200 pull-ups, I had these big holes and tears in my hands. So that's the first thing that really went. At the time, I was 240 pounds. And so I think a bunch of people a lot smarter than me, they did the math, and they said that it was equivalent to pulling 4 space shuttles in weight up and down over 24 hours. So I started getting these big holes, like literally holes and tears, not so much tears, but holes in my hands, because the bar wasn't that stable. It was an outdoor pull-up bar. I had sandbags weighing it down, so every time I would pull up, the energy was just getting displaced and it's shifting and cutting into my hands. And so that happened around 2,200 pull-ups. Then from that point, I did 1,000 more pull-ups, and between 2,200 pull-ups and 3,200 pull-ups. I tore my forearm, I tore my bicep, and my kidneys started shutting down. I started getting rhabdo. I started urinating. It looked like I was urinating blood. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give you a visual, but it got pretty bad.
It was a bad time.
And so I stopped at 3,202 pull-ups in 17 hours on that one, and I ended up in the hospital for a few days. I ended up raising over $11,000 for wounded vets, and the reason why I really kept going was because there is corporations and companies and people. And by the way, this was being broadcasted all across the country. USA Today and a bunch of news stations were updating and broadcasting. So for me, I could have easily taken it and looked at it as a failure. I missed my mark. I tore myself up. I ended up in the hospital. But I believe that there is no failure, only feedback. So what I did was just think of all the ways that I could come back and beat this record. So the moment that I stopped, I was already thinking of how I can come back, taking the lessons learned, and how I could apply it to my next attempt to beat this record. And that's what I did. A year later, I came back and broke it.
And so what if something puts me in I guess that's not true. I was about to say if something puts me in the hospital, I usually don't try it again, but most of the things I've done have put me in the hospital, and I keep right on doing them, much to my wife's chagrin. So what changed in the plan between your first and your second attempt?
I think for me it was really having at that time, I was recovering from 2 blown out knees. I'd hurt my knees in training in the military, and I had tore my left ACL and ripped my right meniscus, and I was recovering still from those injuries. And the reason why I chose the pull-up record was, when you are so physically active, and after I joined the Navy, I became very physically active, and I almost defined myself by my physical abilities, just being an athlete. And when I blew my knees out, I kind of fell into a hole. I kind of fell into a pit. I kind of felt like I lost my identity, and I fell into a little bit of a depression, and I kind of had no purpose, right? So setting the pull-up record was a way for me to reconnect with my identity. I couldn't run. I couldn't do something, obviously, with my lower body that I wanted to. So I chose the pull-up challenge to really set that goal, to get me up every morning, to get me back in a routine of training. And I think with that challenge and moving forward from then, I really needed to identify and have a clarity on what my purpose really was. And I think with that first pull-up challenge, I kind of did it more to pull myself out of that dark place. And that's kind of how I identified with the wounded vets, is losing that sense of service to people, feeling like a burden, feeling like your purpose is missing, your purpose is gone. But I think moving forward from then, I needed a cause that was bigger than me. It couldn't just be about me and my pity party I was having for myself. And going into the pull-up challenge with that mindset, like I was proving something to myself, and it was great. I was doing it for a great cause, but for it to be just solely for me, centered around me, I think that's a big reason why I didn't succeed at it. I think in order for me to go beyond, really go beyond, I had to have a cause that went beyond myself. And so moving forward, I really made all my events and all my labors more than me. I mean, yeah, it's great. I set a record, great. I do these great things. People are inspired by it. I love it. It's great. But the cause, the root of it, is not me as a person. I would care less if people forget my name and forget who I am, but if they remember what I did and why I did it, then that would be good enough for me. And I made peace with that, and I accepted that moving forward, especially that next challenge that I did after the first pull-up event.
So the second attempt at the pull-up record, I'm reading that you wore a pack while you did the challenge.
I wore a 30-pound pack.
You wore a 30. Okay, so you're doing pull-ups with 30 extra pounds on you.
Sure.
And simultaneously going for the overall world record. Am I reading that right?
That's correct.
Because it seems like if I'm going to go set a world record, I'm not going to handicap myself walking in the door. So talk to me about the pack and how did that happen?
So again, after that first challenge, I looked at it, I kind of looked at it as a failure, but not in the sense of failure. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to come back and revisit it. I looked at it as, okay, I fell short, but I wanted to again prove to myself and other people that you can come back after failure stronger. Like, you can hit a setback and you can not only come back, revisit that point, but you can exceed it. And you can come back stronger. So that's why I added the pack, is to prove that not only could I come back and beat the record, but I can do it with a 30-pound pack on, because I'm now a stronger person because of the lessons and the feedback that I gained from the past failure. That failure happened. There's not a darn thing I could do to change it, but what I can take from it is all the valuable feedback and lessons learned from it, and make myself a stronger person and grow through it. So that's what I did. The pack also represented the burden, again, that the wounded warrior carries, emotional and physical burdens. At the end of the day, after 24 hours, I took that pack off. Some of those guys and women, they carry that burden for the rest of their life, and a lot of times it ends a premature death through suicide. And I wanted to represent that weight, that burden, and carry it for them at least for 24 hours. And I wanted to show the country that, not only can you come back after failure, you come back stronger and you come back better. Since that first time I did the pull-up challenge, the record had been beaten 2 or 3 times. So initially the record was 4,030 back in 2014. 2015, when I came back again, the record was now like 5,800 and something. And so I had to almost double my my initial repetitions to beat that record.
Just nuts. So you spend 24 hours doing pull-ups with the pack. Do you like name the pack halfway through the day? Do you start to talk to the pack? Like, what goes on? What are the games that you play with yourself mentally? I mean, there's plenty of time and a lot of thinking to do while you're doing these things. So what goes on in your head?
Really, these events is the practice in just staying present in the moment. I do have a lot of time to think, but for me, when I'm really in the heart of darkness of these events, I'm just taking it 1 rep at a time, in 1 minute, 1 step, depending on whatever it is I'm doing, 1 foot at a time when I was climbing the rope. So for me, it was, the first hour was the same as the last hour. The beginning was the same as the end, and it was just the journey as a whole that I kind of consolidated everything into. It's just one long repetition, right? Just one long journey that I needed to complete, and it was made up of thousands and of individual present moments. And it's a practice in being mindful. It's easy sometimes when you're suffering or going through a lot of pain to put your mind to the end, to the finish line. You're in mile 2 of a race, and you start, your shins start hurting. Your mind is going straight. If you're running a marathon, your mind will go straight to mile 26. And you start thinking, man, I got all this 24 miles to go. It's very easy to do that, and it's very difficult. You have to train yourself to stay in the moment, stay in mile 2, stay present, and focus on your next step. And we start anticipating these things, and then the anxiety builds up, and we start anticipating problems and worries that may or may not happen. And worry is just being worried about something is just having a habit of anxiety that just is out of control. It's a habit. You're not a worrier. You just have that habit of worrying. And for me, it's just staying present, staying mindful, and just taking it 1 step, 1 repetition at a time.
Yeah, I think that advice, run the mile you're in. I don't remember who told me that. Somebody told me that last year or the year before, and that changed my running. And especially at the end of last year, I had a couple of half marathons that I was trying very hard to do well, and one of them I got a terrible start. It was like super crowded, and I was 2.5 minutes or something off pace by mile 3, and I'm like, well, there goes that. But I just ran the mile I was in, like you're saying, looked down, like, well, I can do a 7-minute mile this mile. I don't know if I can do it till the end, but I'm going to do it this mile, and I just kept doing that till the race was over, and ended up being the best race I ever had. So that's been a really, that kind of do this rep perfect, do the next rep perfect, but concentrate on where you're at is a really powerful way to unlock performance that you didn't know you had in you.
Absolutely.
So do you look You're on labor number 6, according to your website, with your 37 days into the 100 days of running 20 miles a day. Do you look forward to the next labor, or does it come to you after, or how does that work?
Really, the way I pick the labors, in my mind, I have an idea of certain events that I want to do, but they're kind of fluid, so I don't have anything set in stone. What I do is I pick the cause first. I find the cause identified, then I match the physical event with that cause. Every event that I do has a component to it that is directly tied to the cause itself. For example, the weight, the pack, the burden of the warrior. When I climbed the rope for the height of Everest, that rope was, I did it for Parkinson's disease. That rope symbolized hope and the feeling that people with Parkinson's have to just want to hold on to their quality of life. They feel like they don't have control, and all they want to do is hold on. So I held on to that rope for 27 hours. And then, again, the run, the truck pull in Death Valley. Death Valley symbolized the mind of the afflicted, depression, PTSD, the loneliness, the isolation. I wanted to put myself in that environment. I want each event that I do to have a component of the actual issue itself. So again, I start with the cause, and then my mind then starts to generate physical feats that go beyond the limits of human performance, and also have a significant amount of suffering associated with it, because pain is a universal language. And I could bake cookies and wash cars all day, but the only thing most people will remember is how clean their car is when they leave, or how good that cookie tastes. But pain, they will always remember why someone went through pain, or why someone is hurting, or why they're hurting. The feelings and the reason and the cause behind it, people will remember, and that's why I do these events. Yeah, I think
there's something to the universal language of pain that kind of bonds different communities of athletes together. Like CrossFit competitors and endurance athletes especially, there's a particular exquisite flavor of pain that you experience in those events, and it becomes you can kind of just smile and nod at someone else who has done that event or been in that place and say, you and I understand each other because we've been there, we've experienced that.
Yeah.
So exceeding the limits of human performance, yes. Latching on to extrinsic motivators, yes, but you're not walking in cold. Like, you're not getting up off the couch and going, you know what I'm going to do tomorrow? I'm going to run 20 miles every day for the next. So what's your lead-in like? Do you have like a training program to ramp up for these things? Is there someone coaching you, helping you out, or is it all self-designed?
No, I don't have a coach. Most of it, all of it really is just self-designed. And I really don't train that much going into these events. And I like that part of it. I like kind of going into it with a bit of that uncertainty, because I think part of going out of your comfort zone is, if I prepared, and I knew exactly what I was getting into, that would take away from the journey for me. I think part of it is having that unknown component in there. I really don't know what may happen, but in that moment, I'm going to find a way to get through it. So I train only about 16 weeks per event that I go into. For this run, I trained about 16 weeks from it. Before that, I wasn't really a runner. I did the 50K, and then I didn't really run after that. It had been a couple years. So I go into these events. I train for it. I train smartly. I train out in the environment, and I really like that component of it being unknown, a little bit of uncertainty, and a little bit of going into the void, into the dark forest, and finding my own way out. And that's the experience of it. The journey of it is kind of discovering myself and who I'm going to be, and what decisions am I going to make in those moments, in the darkest hour, right? So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you would also, if you trained yourself up to a level that was deemed sufficient for the task that you're about to take on, you would also introduce that idea of a hard limit, right?
Sure.
And you would, I mean, that would kind of spoil your ability to get past it, because you would be reinforcing in your mind, well, this is what I've trained for, and if I go past that, I haven't trained for that. It's a really interesting. It's a totally opposite mindset from the one that I use with a lot of my athletes, but you are definitely trying to do some different things.
for example, like when I did the truck pull, right? I pulled the truck 22 miles across Death Valley. I didn't pull a truck in training. The entire time I trained, I didn't pull a truck until maybe the last couple weeks of that training, and I maybe pulled a truck 2 or 3 times because I didn't want that. I didn't want to be comfortable with pulling a truck. I wanted to bring that out of me, that to go beyond. I pulled logs across the beach and up and down mountains. I did anything but pull a truck. Same thing with the rope climb. I did everything but climb a rope to train for a 27-hour rope climb. It's kind of like a boxing match when you're going to face an opponent. You don't want to see that guy, the thing that you're going to go to battle with. You don't want to see it in your face every single day, right? I just kind of, so I treated the truck, I treated the rope kind of like an opponent, an enemy, like something I was going to battle with. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to deal with it. And I found, and it created, it brings out a creativity in me to train or find supplemental training to still condition myself for the event. And I got pretty creative with how I trained for a lot of these events by staying away from the actual the thing that I was doing itself.
Okay, so you get a little, you mix up the mode a little bit, and maybe avoid pre-fatiguing or pre-injuring yourself before the actual thing starts too, which is, I mean, you don't necessarily want to go there. So it's not just the runs. You are not running 20 miles in the morning and then putting your feet up and getting massages for the rest of the day right now. What, you have other things going on? Sure.
Yeah. So I run most days in the week. I run between 3 and 4 in the morning. Okay. And it takes me about 3.5 hours to finish my run. Then I go straight to school. I'm in school full time, and I also work full time. I'm a mental strength coach, and I'm a trainer. So I work with a lot of corporations and athletes, professional Olympic teams, and I do workshops and seminars, talks, and things like that, leadership, team building, and I train people. And I also go to school full time. So I got a full plate, but you know, the billionaire and the beggar both have 24 hours in a day, and it's just about. I wouldn't even say it's prioritization. It's really what's important to me. What's important to you, really? I don't believe in procrastination. I just think there's things that are important to you and there's things that are less important to you. And it's really, you have to choose what's important to you. And you'll find that usually you'll find time for things that are important to you.
There will always be time. Yeah. There's always enough time and money for the things you want there to be time and money for.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to picture myself walking into like LA Fitness and randomly getting you as a personal trainer. That would probably destroy me. Like, what kind of clients are you training on at a personal level?
Well, I train athletes. I train athletes at a professional level and a lot of collegiate athletes.
Okay.
Some high school athletes, but I also train like just everyday people. During the time that I'm doing a labor, I kind of pull back from the training and really focus on the labor and my work and kind of school, things like that. But when I train people, the way I train and the way I go about it is kind of like do as I say, not as I do. I'm more like, I'm very aware of my body, and I train hard, but I train smartly so I don't injure myself. But I train in an unorthodox way. Like I said, to pull the truck, I was pulling wet driftwood logs up and down the beach, and things like carrying large stones and things like that up and down mountains. And I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend someone at any level just to go out and start doing that kind of stuff. I do really advocate for pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, but your comfort zone is relative to you. Stepping outside your comfort zone could just be putting your shoes on and running half a mile, once a week. That could be really pushing the limit for you. If that's it for you, then do that. Do that thing that takes you beyond. But for me, I kind of have to go. I kind of have to get creative and really go out of the box with some of the ways that I train. So training someone and me training myself are kind of two different worlds.
Yeah, I can only I can only imagine. What are you going to school for?
I'm going to school for management and organizational leadership.
Okay. My wife has a degree in organizational leadership. Wake up, run 20 miles, go to school, do homework, go to work, come home. What do you eat because you are just driving all day.
Yeah, I have to ask myself at sometimes, what am I eating? I'm always hungry. I take in about 9 to 12,000 calories a day. Most
Okay.
days probably 10,000 calories. I meet somewhere in the middle. But I drink a lot of. Most of my meals are liquid, so I get a lot of calories in liquid form. Fresh whole foods, but I just blend it up and I
Right.
drink it. So I do a lot of those. It's quick, and it's an easy way for me to stay hydrated and just get in the calories that I need. Because, like I said, I started this challenge at 240. I'm about 212 now, or I was 235. I'm like 212 now. So even though I'm taking in 10,000 calories a day, I'm still losing weight doing this event. So I'm still trying to find that balance, and sticking to what the science and the macros and the things tell you to do. Is sometimes you have to kind of go beyond that, because every body is different. So for me, doing that formula wasn't working, so I needed to up it. So
Right.
I'm still trying to find that balance right now.
Well, the numbers are only as good as the data behind it, right? And there's not really any data around the things that you're doing. Nobody's studied you in a double-blind controlled, lab environment. And if they did, it would be thoroughly fascinating stuff to read. What's in the shake that you're drinking right now?
So in this drink, this is my post-run drink, and I have some turmeric in here. I have some mushrooms. I have like regular mushrooms, not psychedelic. I have some kale. I have some powdered carbohydrates. I have carrots, apples, mango, and I have some spirulina in here too.
Okay. Just dump in the carbs, get some anti-inflammatory stuff, get a whole bunch of micronutrients.
Yeah, the micronutrients is really the because I still eat like chew food, and that's when I get in like my potatoes and pastas and things like that. But I only do that like once a day,
Okay.
and the rest of the days are like the micronutrients is really what I'm trying, because I'm sweating and I really need those micronutrients for my recovery, and aminos. I have some aminos in here.
Do you take anything with you on your runs?
I take frog fuel. It's a pre-digested collagen protein, but it also has about 10 grams of carb. So I take 2 or 3 packs of those. So every hour I'll just take a frog fuel. It's like a gel, endurance gel. And I have 2 12-ounce water sippy cup things. I don't know. It's like a fanny pack. I call it it's a sport pack. People call it a fanny pack because it's on the back. Fanny is on the front, so.
Well, if you're running, then it's a sport anything, right? I mean, you could. Perfect.
Yeah.
So, 12 Laborers Project was started. You got out of the Navy. How is that timeline?
I got out of the Navy in 2016. I started 12 Laborers Project in 2014.
Okay.
So while I was doing all these events, I was still working. I was an air traffic controller. I was still working full-time at one of the busiest air traffic control facilities in the Navy. And for example, after the rope climb, I went to work the next day. After a pull-up challenge, I went to work the next day. I still had a job to do. I still had that. I was in the military, so for me, I like that though. I like knowing that I could do that. I like knowing that I can take care of business. I could still serve my country and do what I had to do, and still pursue this passion I had. So for me, I had a good balance. But then it got to a point where I really wanted to focus on what I was passionate, what my heart was, really pulling me to do. So I started planning and putting in the plan to get out of the Navy and kind of focus on this in school, and my work and my passion is working with people and inspiring people and doing these events and things like that.
So where does you get to 12 labors, you complete them, you've raised bazillions of dollars for really great charities. What happens at 13, or is there 13?
There's no 13. This is 12. So I've committed to doing 12 increasingly difficult challenges, and that's kind of like my legacy that I plan to. That's what I'm leaving for this earth. At the end of the day, I don't have a family. I don't have children. I just have this work, this passion, this. My purpose through this 12 labors, and I hope that when it's all done, that it will it will bring out greatness in a lot of people to make this world really a better place. And really, it really stems from just a love of humanity too. You know, I'm one of the people that really believe that there's still a lot of good in the world, a lot of good in people. And I think if what I'm doing inspires one person to kind of step out of their comfort zone, or just go against the norm, go against the grain, and kind of follow their passion, and if it's good for them, if it's good for the community, if it's good for the world, then if one person does that, another will do it. And I hope for this 12 Labors project to stand as like kind of a monument and start that ripple. So there will be no 13. There will only be 12, but hopefully 12 is enough.
I'm 100% sure that 12 will be enough, and will provide you with enough stories and background and everything else to continue your dialogue that you want to have with society moving forward. What scares you? Like, if I ask you to go do something tomorrow, what's the thing that you say, I'm not doing that, Pete, I'm not going to do it?
You ask me to kill a spider tomorrow, I'll tell you to go. I got bit by I got bit by a snake or a spider in my neck here. It almost killed me.
No kidding. Was that on deployment?
No, I was training, I was in the Cascades out here in the Northwest, and I was out there off the beaten path, so to speak, and something bit me out there, and it got infected, and I had to go through emergency surgery, and I was literally hours away from it eating through my carotid artery, so it almost killed me.
Do all these crazy things, and you almost get killed by an insect.
By an insect, yeah.
That is the irony. So you've got, along with your current effort, running 20 miles a day for 100 days. You have a GoFundMe page that's set up to go along with that. And they can also find you at 12laborsproject.com. Everything seems to be linked up there. What else have you got coming for us in the future?
So I'm doing this event, right? I'm doing this 100-day labor. After I'm done with the 100th day is July 20th.
Okay.
And then immediately after that, I'm doing that 3-day retreat for vets out in Sisters, Oregon. And then after that, I'm going right into my fall semester at school, and I will do another labor in early spring.
Okay.
I really don't like to put the labors out there in the universe while I'm still kind of doing one.
Right.
I'm a little superstitious in that sense, I guess, but.
No, that's totally understandable. I have a nasty habit of telling everybody I'm going to go do a race and then hurting myself before the race and doing it anyway. Yeah. I am on board with your superstition. So we're going to put the link to your GoFundMe page in the show notes. It is gofundme.com/veteran suicide retreat fund with hyphens between the words. They can find you on facebook.com/michael.mcastle. I think I just had it up.
Yeah, facebook.com, it should be michael.mcastle.
Yep, and we'll be posting your videos periodically up on Breaking Muscle's Facebook page and sharing this podcast on Breaking Muscle's website here soon. Michael McCastle, thank you so much for joining us today. You have just a fascinating story. We'll definitely be checking in again with you as you get closer to completion in your current labor. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'll chat again.
See you.